Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This has really just been great already. So much great information. We're really honored. Today, as you can see, is a role exchange as an experiential learning strategy with the ever so fabulous Jonathan Edwards and Jessica Wolfe. Jonathan is the acting director for the Overdose Education and sorry if I don't know how to say it, naloxone distribution unit at the NYC Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And he's also an adjunct professor of social work at Columbia University and consults nationally, advancing peer support workforce development. And he identifies as a person in long-term recovery. And then there's the fabulous Jessica Wolfe. Dr. Wolfe is principal and decision solutions consulting and assistant clinical professor in the Yale Department of Psychiatry. She's actively promoted peer workforce development for many years, and her lived experience of mental health conditions, trauma, and recovery informs her consulting and commitment to strengthen the peer workforce. So welcome, and thank you everyone for joining us. Just so you know, all of the sessions are recorded, and it's already started, and today's presentations will be available at a later time. But if you have any questions or technical problems, just DM me during this chat and we can figure it out. Please be sure to mute yourself and remain muted unless you've been called upon to speak. And so at the end, we will have questions. So if you can save them, you can put them in the chat or ask me. But for now, I will turn it over to Jonathan Edwards and let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cynthia. My name is
you.
Jonathan Edwards, and I am very happy to be here with my colleague, Dr. Jessica Wolfe. And we're going to get started. I always lament at the fact that I'm not able to see all your smiling faces in the gallery because I'm operating the slides. And so in order to do that, unless I had two screens, I'm not able to. So it feels like there's a little bit of impersonal connection going on, but I just want to be transparent about that. So we're going to start off with our workshop structure and timing, which Dr. Wolfe is going to walk us through very quickly.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Cynthia, and thank you, Cher, for this opportunity. We're quite enthusiastic about it. And basically what we really want to just give you is an overview of the sequence. So we're now doing the introduction. We'll go to the objectives. What is experiential learning and role exchange and application and strategies. And then we get into the fun part. We're going to have a scenario where Jonathan and I will do a role exchange, and then we're going to have you go into breakout groups where we'll give you instructions about doing a role exchange with each other, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk about it. So we're really pleased that we have a chance to do some interactive work together, and we'll have summary and questions and feedback, recommendations, and next steps. So we can go on to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you so much. So our first poll question, and this is actually going to pop up on the screen, but here's a little preview. Are you familiar with the concept of experiential learning? Yes or no? So I don't know if you can see the poll, but I'm not able to see it because I'm in slideshow view.
I am not seeing it. I am not seeing it. Do you want me to post it?
If you can put the poll question up, because this is actually a yes/no question.
Okay, it says to launch.
Yeah.
Okay. Question one. It's all the questions are here, but you could just
right. But only so they only have to answer question. Yeah, they only have to answer question one.
And you can see it now. Okay.
Yes, you can see everything. So I just want to repeat, if everyone could just answer question one. Unfortunately, what's going to happen is you are going to have to answer them all. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is put your answer for question one, then I'm going to ask you to hit remain the same for two and unsure for three. And then we may just have to put that poll up again 2 times, and we may have to do something similar. But we know, and I'm going to take a screenshot, that this is the first poll. It's just that all the questions are together. So they have to answer them all in order to submit. I hope that was clear.
I'm not quite sure why that happened, but I'm gonna have to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, we can troubleshoot later, but if you just answer question one honestly and then fudge 2 and 3 as remain the same and unsure respectively, and then submit, then at least we'll have data for question one. The class is always somewhat full. And we'll give it, another 45 seconds and then,
So are people filling it out? Because I'm just seeing the poll.
well, that's all you'll see until Cynthia posts the results.
Okay.
Because Cynthia has control over the poll.
In the meantime, I'm gonna, on the back end, find out for the next two how to do that. I have not had that experience before. Let me know when you're ready.
Good.
All right.
It looks like you've got 13 at 61% have participated.
All right. So we'll give it
That's
another 15 seconds.
Great.
Okay. Like I said, if you're sort of just joining or just kind of tuning in, answer the first question, and then for 2 and 3, just put the third choice and hit submit, because all the questions are there together, and the only way to submit is to answer all of them. Okay, what's our percentage now, Cynthia?
We are still the same. So
69.
I'd say let's do it. 13 of 22, 59%.
Okay. So very good. So let's post the results here.
Okay. It should post now. Share results.
Okay.
And then I'll see if I can.
So, yeah, so don't pay attention to 2 or 3. Just look at 1. So Jessica, do you want to sort of take that breakdown and acknowledge where we're at?
Sure. So 77% said yes, they're familiar with the concept of experiential learning, which is wonderful. And no is 22%, 23%.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you for participating in that first poll question. So now we're going to do something a little different. And Jessica, I don't remember, is this you or is this me?
It doesn't matter. I'll do it.
Okay. So
the second the second part is not a poll question. It's the chatterfall, right?
yes.
Okay. So what we're looking for here is, if no, what do you think it might mean? Or if you already know, write your definition in a few words, but don't hit enter until everybody's had a chance, until we say so. We'd like everyone to write your answer, but we're going to enter them all at once. And that creates something called a chatterfall, like a waterfall, which will give us all of us kind of an interesting collection of people's responses. So, okay, ready? Everybody ready? All right, go ahead, enter your responses to either yes or no, your content responses. Thank you, and we'll all take a look at the chat. Well, it didn't work. So the idea, folks, is to write.
The problem is that we haven't had time to write our definitions yet.
Well,
Yeah, just give us a second. We'll fill it out.
All right, sure. We'll give it a little more time.
Obviously, on paper, Jessica and I are overachievers, so just bear with us.
I'm impressed you're using Chatterfall. I think it's awesome.
Well, I went to a webinar a couple of weeks ago where I learned about it for the first time, and I was very impressed with it, because you get this sequence, you get everything all at once, whereas ordinarily in chat you see this, you see that, So it's a very clever thing, and as I said, I learned it from someone else.
We never stop learning, do we?
I know.
There may be another
Okay, so
opportunity
here
to
now
do it at the
now
end.
we're getting a sort of the experience, learning from your work, learning by doing, applying the concept of field work, learning that takes place by osmosis rather than instruction, comes from listening to others with similar experiences. Okay.
Oh, Ruth. Hi, Ruth. It's good to have Ruth here. And she says experiential learning is learning that takes place by osmosis, as you just read, Jessica. But I think I was so excited to see Ruth that I just reread the response. So
And
Ruth,
here's
by the way,
another.
for those attending, Ruth is our CEO and founder of Share, and she's the one who's responsible for all of this and bringing all of these wonderful speakers like you in. And so thank you for coming, Ruth.
Is my audio better? It was terrible before.
It's okay now. We can
Yeah,
hear you.
it's
We can hear
okay.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And this is an interesting learning by sharing our own experience and valuing others as well. It's a circular learning. Very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some
Real
really
quick.
really good responses here. So for the sake of time, Jessica,
Yes.
should we
Yes.
advance?
Yes,
Okay.
we should.
All righty. So what we're going to talk about now are the workshop objectives, and I believe I'm up. And so
Yes.
after attending this 1-hour workshop, participants will be able to first define role exchange and experiential learning. And you sort of got that already because there were a lot of great answers in the chat. So I think you'll be able to at least achieve that first objective quickly. And number 2 is to articulate at least one strategy to increase cross-disciplinary communication. Such an important concept, and excited to be here to learn more about that with you. And third, to identify an actionable interdisciplinary team building approach. You know, there's a great social worker by the name of Mary Parker Follett, the late Mary Parker Follett, who contended that at the end of the day, it's all about the relationships that make the ship sail. So interdisciplinary team building approaches and strategies are paramount. So these are our workshop objectives. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, our expert in experiential learning.
Anyway, what is experiential learning? A powerful and proven approach to teaching and learning based on one incontrovertible reality. People learn best through experience. In the second edition of his book, Experiential Learning, Experience as the Source of Learning and Development, David A. Kolb presents experiential learning theory and its applications to education, work, and adult development. He's like the guru of experiential learning. And so the next slide shows the Kolb learning cycle. And so at the top, you see concrete experience. That doesn't mean concrete, it means actual experience. Don't think rocks. Followed by reflective observation, leading to abstract conceptualization, followed by active experimentation, and then it starts all over again. So the point of this lovely little chart is that it's a circular process that keeps going, you know, which is one of the nice things. It sort of validates the lifelong learning idea. Okay, we'll go to the next slide.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the value of experiential learning. And, you know, we know that you've all said, many of you have said that people learn best through direct experience. And as Ruth said, osmosis, actually working alongside someone as opposed to didactic learning or reading something from a book. One of the other valuable things about experiential learning is that participants can continue and reinforce their own learning. And it reminds me a lot about peer support, that oftentimes when we offer peer support, we sustain our own personal recovery for those who identify as such. And this is a very similar concept. Third is that experiential learning fosters increased awareness. I think on both parts, you know, it is very much a mutual learning process. And then lastly, experiential learning can be utilized and applied in many settings. I think some of those settings that Jessica and I have been discussing over the weeks have been, you know, in educational settings, in industry settings, but there's not a whole lot of literature that demonstrates that this has been utilized in behavioral health, pardon the term. So we're really excited to be here today at a Share Self-Help conference to introduce or reintroduce experiential learning and role exchange. We're going to move to the next slide.
Yes. So what is role exchange? And we've coined the phrase, although I'm sure we didn't invent it. And it's the way we see it is it's the process of exchanging roles during role play scenarios to promote better understanding of those in differing roles, such as peer support workers, clinicians, supervisors, supervisees, any combination of folks who come from different perspectives. And the way it works is that role play participants exchange roles. So for example, a peer specialist plays the role of a non-peer supervisor, and a non-peer supervisor plays the role of a peer specialist. It can be used as an experiential learning strategy in many different settings, as Jonathan already mentioned. But here are some others. Parents and children, yes, you can try this one at home. Ethnically differing individuals, people in conflict. And I would like to say that we owe a debt of appreciation to Alternatives to Violence program. I always say prevention, but it's the AVP program, which really helped me come up with this aspect of the approach. Gender differences, et cetera. So again, I hope you will think about it not only in your work that we're talking about today, but in your life. We use the term role exchange in experiential learning to enhance and deepen participants' learning and to increase empathy and understanding. And again, these are very consistent with peer support values. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. And
So now,
Jonathan,
talk very briefly, thank you, about why use role exchange as an experiential learning strategy. And so role exchange is a means to walk in another person's shoes. And that's such a profound old adage that, you know, walking in another person's shoes doesn't necessarily mean being that person, but getting a glimpse of that person's experience, of having a parallel experience. It encourages real-time dialogue among colleagues. So, you know, we don't have to wait on a report, or we don't have to wait on results from clinical observation. We can do it in real time, which allows us to course correct or to change course more efficiently. And then it also promotes increased empathy, collaboration, teamwork, and interdisciplinary practice. Attributes that we saw early on in our learning objectives. And so we're really excited to get closer and closer to our actual activity. Oh, wow, we're closer than I thought.
so go ahead, Jonathan. We're going to get someone to read.
Or yes, we'd like a volunteer to read scenario 1, which is our demonstration. And this is entitled Addressing Boundaries. So can someone just jump in and read away, including what's in the blue highlighted area?
I'll volunteer.
Please, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Princess from the Wildflower Collective. Glad to be here. Scenario 1, Addressing Boundaries, demonstration by Facilitators. Timothy is a peer navigator for a well-known community-based organization. Dolores, one of the people he supports, overheard Timothy talking about the wonderful and enlightening church service he attended last week. Seeking to find a church family and wanting a sense of belonging, Dolores approaches Timothy to ask if she could attend service with him on the following Sunday. Unsure of how to respond, Timothy asks Dolores if he can get back to her later and then contacts his supervisor to discuss the matter. Facilitators will demonstrate a supervisory discussion that follows the above scenario in the roles of Timothy and his supervisor, Lucille. They are discussing how Timothy could approach Dolores regarding her request to attend church with him.
Thank you so much, Princess from the Wildflower Collection. And Lucille, I'm knocking at your door because I'm really eager to talk with you about a situation that's come up in supervision that I think will really be able to help.
Oh, come on in and let's see what we can do.
Okay. Well, how are you doing today, first of all? I haven't seen you all week.
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing great, but I feel a little bit conflicted about a situation.
Okay.
You know, I've been working with Dolores. She's such a wonderful person who's attending the program, and she's really been eager to get out and to make connections in the community. And you know, she overheard me talking with Ben, about this church service that I go to, and how affirming it is, and affirming all-inclusive congregation, and they have a lot of social activities. And she approached me when we sort of had our little one-on-one. She said that she was interested in finding a church family, and I really want to be a resource. I just sort of feel a little bit conflicted because I am concerned about boundaries, but I'm also aware that we're in a rural area and there's not a lot of churches around. There are not a lot of spiritual centers around, and I'm not really sure how to respond to her. I don't want to put her off, but I also want to be mindful of the space that I take as a person when I'm not at work.
So have you thought of some options that might address your concerns as well as respond to what she seems to be expressing?
Well, one idea that came up, I'm not sure if it's really good, but I was thinking about, there's probably other participants who, also want to get out and socialize. And I was maybe thinking about, proposing it as a group outing. Therefore sort of, creating equity, not equity, but sort of self-efficacy among people who are in the program. So maybe they would be more likely to go together, and I would be the facilitator or help them make the linkage to the community resource. But, I could be really transparent about the expectation that this was a social building exercise, so that I can sort of build a boundary that I wouldn't be attending. We wouldn't all be attending together all the time, but I feel a little shaky about that suggestion.
So what do you see as the pluses and the challenges of that? So are you thinking that the group approach would somehow be less problematic for you, or you're still not so sure about that?
Well, I think the group approach might be less problematic for everyone because for me, and we're in supervision, so I feel comfortable saying it'll kind of let me off the hook from feeling like I always have to chaperone people places, when this program is really about fostering independence, for individuals. And then it could work out for the group, because not only is there enhanced socialization among group members, but between group members in the community. So I think it's worth giving a shot. And I've already thought about sort of one of the scenarios could be that no one but Dolores wants to go, and then I think I can sort of say, Dolores, I'd be more than happy to sort of as accompany you for the first visit. As a peer supporter, one of the things that I do for my own wellness is to take space and time from the job. So when I attend service, sometimes I do like to be alone or go with a family member or a friend, and I don't want you to think that it's personal or that I'm being off-putting, but it's an important boundary that I observe to sort of support my own wellness. And I just want to be clear that it's nothing having to do with you or anyone else in the program.
So let's think of one other thing before we end our time together, which is, suppose there is a group that comes to your church, and they're accompanying each other, and then they want to keep coming. How does that feel to you? And then we'll stop.
I think, there's a saying that it's not always about the outcome, but the process. And I think, having spoken to you about this, I feel really good that, like, whether Dolores comes as an individual or comes, with a group, is that, I don't mean to sound trite, but like, everyone's free to worship anywhere. And, we run into people all the time. Like, I run into, people I work with in the supermarket and, in the mall. And, we just learn that, people are people. And just because someone's coming to the program for services, it doesn't mean that they're different than I am. They just happen to be utilizing our program. And I think some of it is the internalized stigma that we feel when we run into people that we work with in public settings. I think we get uncomfortable with our own stuff when in fact the participants are fine. So I think maybe I need to be a little bit more introspective about my feelings, and I'm willing to try.
Well, how about if we both think about your plan and give it a little time, just to let, as they say, sleep on it, and we'll discuss it one more time when we meet next time.
That sounds good. Thank you so much for your time, Lucille. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to be of any assistance to you, Timothy. You're doing a great job.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to just describe, we're staying in our roles of Timothy and Lucille, and we're going to describe our feelings while we were in those roles. And then we're going to go back into our usual roles, which we didn't explain to you exactly. So we'll do that when we get to that. But Timothy, in your role as Timothy, Jonathan, would you like to say anything about, how did this feel, this experience, doing this interaction? What were your concerns?
Oh, I felt slightly uptight because I didn't want to be offensive in how I described the need for my own wellness. Like I didn't want to do that at the expense of someone else. But I mean, I didn't feel awful about it. I just felt really mindful that sometimes in speaking about our needs, it's easy to others. And but I also felt that you listened to me. I was looking at you and I could tell from your body language that you were really listening and allowing me to sort of get out. And you asked some really good questions. So that worked really well for me. How about you? What worked well for you?
Well, I think I felt like it was a good conversation. I was kind of worried that there could still be issues for you that could arise. That was why I said, let's think about it and so forth, because sometimes, I mean, it's very tricky, when we have places we go for safety, for renewal, really, and nourishment. As you said very, very well, I think, we all live in a community, right? I mean, we run into people all the time that we know in various contexts. We run into our doctor, we run into our teacher, etc. Still, I just had this sort of question, whether this would work or not, or what would really be a good solution. So
Yeah.
And so now, just going back to the role exchange, is there anything else we want to say? And we didn't explain first. And Jonathan, go ahead and explain your experience as a peer specialist, the role that you were playing.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm just going to backtrack a little bit because I advanced the slide too much. I'm going to go back to the scenario for a moment. So basically Jessica and I were talking about, how we were going to do role exchange when in fact she's playing a supervisor, and one might say, well, that's not a role exchange. But Jessica's work in doing supervision has been, in administrative positions, grant funded positions. In simple words, she was not supervising peer specialists. So this is a bit of a role exchange for her. And for myself, even though I am a certified peer specialist, one of the things that it occurs to me is that I've never been a paid peer specialist. I've always done peer support because it's something that I believe in. It's something that I've had, not to sound classes, but the luxury of doing and engaging in, off of work time, and also embedding it into my role sometimes, but not working within that title. So for me, playing Timothy is in fact a role exchange because Timothy is a paid peer navigator. We didn't say that, but we just want to help you to understand how the roles differentiate from the roles that we've embodied in the past.
Okay, and I think now we can go to the feedback and discussion portion. The next slide. Go ahead.
Right, and we're going to ask people to type in the chat of what worked well in the scenario, and we're going to try to call out a few responses. I'm going to do the first two, Jessica will do the second two, and then we'll move on to the breakout rooms. We're doing well with time, I think.
Yeah, we're fine.
All right, so I'm going to go to the chat and watch what worked well in the scenario. And this is not Chatterfall, so you can click away whenever you'd like. Timothy and Lucille seem to be listening to each other. Okay, so for the sake of time, we really want to hear from many. Okay, great. The issues with the questions were delineated. The relationship was important. So feel free to keep responding to what worked well. We will go to the next feedback and discussion question. What could be different and why? And Richie says that Lucille was affirming of Timothy's skill and ability. So that was something that worked well, we presume. And then it also says here that they were clear about their concerns and the supervisor asked questions that assisted self-reflection. Cece or Sissy said, I liked how the supervisor asked questions that focused the peer to think of his wellness. And Ruth says, it wasn't a crisis, but time was allowed to come to a good result. And one last time, continued back and forth dialogue with one another that ended with a circle back, touch base on the strategies, next steps discussed. I'm wondering if that's what could have been different and why, or if that's something that worked well, but that's a great comment.
Well, and I think, just to put in there, I'm thinking of that expression, you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. As a supervisor, I still didn't feel we had reached closure 100%. And so I said so.
Yeah. Here's a very interesting comment from Christina. It says, I think discussing it with his supervisor first, rather than just taking matters into his own hands and saying yes or no to the client worked well. Oh, okay. Okay. I misread that at first. And Ruth says possible scenarios were suggested and assessed. Okay, so let's talk about what could be different and why. If we can read some comments about that. And because this is experiential learning, this is where a great deal of lessons learned occurs, that when we're human, there are blind spots. So what could be different and why?
Or there's more than one way to,
Yeah.
there's always a variety of ways of considering situations and possible resolutions.
Yeah, this is the alpha delta, what went well, what could be different, or what's an alternative way, as opposed to saying what's right and what's wrong. And I know those responses are going to come in because they were nice and hearty for that last question. I think what could be different next time is we could have some nice, I want to say elevator music, but we can have some nice background music, while people are like Jeopardy.
Oh gosh,
she'll have more than 15
that wouldn't
seconds.
help me.
Well, not the same, and they would have more than 15 seconds.
Well, should we go on to the next one anyway?
Yeah, we should. And
Okay.
you can take the, oh, okay. So now, oh no, I got something that said recording is on. Okay, now here's some questions. It says, possibly bring other peers into the discussion about boundaries. Oh, I like that. And then Christina says, maybe suggest next time that another, and now it jumped because now it is Chatterfally. Maybe suggest next time that another peer navigator go along so Timothy doesn't feel like he's supervising the clients on his own.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe taking time to refer back to company policy on taking individuals to your places of worship or any place you seek services. It's one thing them finding it themselves, but another taking them. That's a question. That's really, this is so great. I'm really excited because we're getting things that, like we might have thought about it, but we didn't really develop it. And then we'll read Ruth's and then go on. Anyone is welcome to the church. So tying it to the peer support program might not be the best choice, particularly since funders might be a problem. Yeah. Princess says, when Timothy stated his concern, the reflection back was, have you thought of any ideas or solutions? A grow could be to have reflected Timothy's initial concern first before talking about solutions.
Yeah.
These are wonderful. So next, Jessica,
Yeah.
you're up with the.
Okay. So the next, thank you very much. Those are all great. How did the role exchange enhance Timothy's and Lucille's learning? That might be tricky, but let's see what you have to say. It may be that that one would be better answered after they do the breakouts. their
Yeah,
own role exchange.
yeah.
So I would be comfortable moving along.
Yeah,
But people asking folks, keep that in mind for when you're doing it yourselves. How did it or didn't it enhance your learning?
yeah. Yeah, and
in
for
role?
time's sake, Jessica, can we also look at what was the most important learning for
Yes.
you? Yeah, so we can move on because we want you to have time to go into the breakout
Yeah,
room. So
let's go ahead.
yeah, here's the scenario for the breakout group discussion. It's a 12-step meeting. Ruth, would you please volunteer and read this, even though I asked you? I'm inviting you to volunteer.
Sure. Andrea, a peer worker, is thinking of going to a 12-step meeting with Ignacio, a peer with a substance use history. Andrea asks their supervisor, Felix, for input and permission. Role play the conversation between Andrea and Felix in reverse roles, then follow the directions given for discussion and comments by group members. Okay, and see the instructions on the next slide and post it in chat.
And yes, I'm going to post them in the chat again. This is the link to the instructions, and we're also going to advance the slide so that you will have the scenario and the instructions in your breakout rooms. So Cynthia, are you doing the breakout rooms for us? We have 22 people, including me and Jessica. So do we want to do 5 groups of 4?
5 groups of 4. Do you want to pick the groups, or do you want them to be
Just random?
whatever happens?
And
Yeah, what happens.
Okay, all right, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I was looking at the
and
options.
are we
here.
gonna float, Jonathan?
Yeah, so what I would probably suggest is 3 groups of 5 and 1 group of 7, but then Jessica and I would have to be in the same group and we would decline so that all groups would have 5. If you can do that. If not, it's okay. And if one group has 3 and one has 5, that's cool.
All right, I'm just setting them up real quick here. Just give me a second. Based on how many people are here. Just sort of randomly
Yes.
making it happen. Okay, there we go. Some of you will have, let me just 1 more second here. All right, one group has 5 and the other groups all have 3 or 4. So here we go.
That's fun. And we're going to actually revise it and give people 10 minutes and come back. So at 3:08, we're going to give you a signal. We really want to make sure that we hear how the experience was for you. So we're going to call you back at 3:20.
3:20. Okay,
Yes.
Here we go. I'm going to open all rooms.
12:20.
12:20. Yeah, sorry, you're on the New York time. Right.
It's a long breakout session.
Here we go. Here we go. Just following Jonathan's rules here, guys. I don't know how far you got, but making sure that you get what you need. So I'll let you take back the room, Jessica and Jonathan.
Yes, Cynthia, thanks for doing that, because I didn't have the ability to send messages and warn people or even redistribute people in the room. So that's probably just a setting, but I think like I said, the glass being half full. So
yeah, I kind of redistributed the room a little bit because it was a little random and tried to make it more even but I couldn't find you, Jonathan, but I'm glad it worked out. So I'll let you go for it.
Well, okay, great. We're back. So what we're going to do now is just hear from people. We won't go by group, we'll just go by individual about your group experience. So we're going to ask that you stay in role and discuss your experience, how it felt, what was similar and different compared to your usual experience in your usual role. So we could just hear from a few people, and if other people want to type that in the chat, please feel free to do that.
Or we also have a small enough group that people could speak if they want.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We were asking whoever would like to please jump in, and all the rest can put it in the chat and speak.
Perhaps that would be good because the session ends at 12:30, and I want to make sure that we have a chance to do the evaluation form and you guys can do your closing remarks. So maybe we could just have a quick sort of crosstalk chat or something if you think that's more efficient.
Yeah, that would be good. I think that's a great idea. So if you could put that in the chat.
Speak up or forever hold your peace.
Yeah.
Right. It's fine to
So does someone want to explain their experience in one of the rooms? Like maybe somebody in Jessica and Ruth's
well, that was just
in that room, Uh-huh.
Ruth, do you want to say?
I guess that's me. So, what was interesting to me about it was how collaborative it was. It's like I played the peer specialist, and I normally play the supervisor, and what I really liked was that my supervisor listened to my suggestions, and that there was a discussion, as opposed to when I'm the supervisor, I'm not getting a lot of suggestions from my staff. So maybe that's something I need to learn how to elicit better.
Thank you, Ruth. Does anyone else want to sort of comment? Unfortunately, we're going to have to move a little faster than we anticipated.
Now, there were other rooms, somebody who wasn't in with Jessica. I think maybe Carol was in a different room, or Princess, weren't you in a different room than them? How about you, Princess?
I sure was. I really appreciated this experience, especially, I won't name my partner. I will say that my partner Richie's raising his hand. My partner has the experience of being a supervisor and switched roles and was a peer. So for myself, being in the supervisor position, I felt like the conversation worked really well, because I was constantly thinking in my head, like, okay, how can I be both compassionate and the supervisor, while also knowing that my partner has the experience of a supervisor and is kind of giving that to me as a peer. So it was like I felt like for my own communication and being reflective, it was really helpful to kind of have him as my partner to really grow in myself. So thanks, Richie, and Cece too. Thanks for popping in at the end.
Yeah, I would add to that Princess probably in real life has a great supervisor, because she demonstrated experiential learning in her response to me as a peer there. So
Thank you.
That's awesome. Did you want to share any other results of polls or anything, Jonathan, before we did you want to do any more polls before I post the the evaluation form, and to just remind you of what the next session is?
We do.
Yeah, let's see if we can do this one quickly about the understanding. If you can post this poll, and we'll see what happens with the way the questions are written.
Sure, I'm gonna it says share results, so I'm gonna have to do that and then close it, I think. So hold on a minute. Let me start it over.
Okay, so yeah.
Wait, hold on, I'm gonna do it again. Sorry about that. Here we go.
All right, so unfortunately, because the questions were all in the same pane, we can't do that, but we do have another question here, and this will be a okay, so yeah, these are all polls, unfortunately. So what we can do is just ask people, has your understanding of experiential learning increased, decreased, or stayed the same? I think that's going to be real important to see in the chat. If we can ask you if it increased, decreased, or stayed the same. I mean, even without the quantitative poll, we can really learn a lot from how you respond to this question.
Yeah, just go ahead and add it to the chat. And
yes.
for some reason, it posted all three questions. I'm not quite sure what happened there.
You know, with Zoom and technology, you sort of have to be not set the bar
Flexible.
low, but just be prepared for unforeseen scenarios. So it increased the experience learning of role reversal, taught me things, stayed the same, but I utilized experiential learning extensively in my practice. I'm calling you Richie. Increased from Guadalupe. Who else?
Well, people can
Appreciate
answer
that someone's been doing this regularly. Appreciated seeing the experience from both sides. Increased. Feel like we're counting votes. Increased.
Live polling.
Yeah. Jessica, did we want to try to squeeze in any others, or do you think we need to just
Well,
jump to the?
I think it would be helpful. Do you think that this kind of approach, experiential learning and role exchange, will be useful or can be useful in your work going forward? And you can just do yes, no, unsure.
Great.
And I think
I'm
that then
curious
we'll
if-
cut it off. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious if unsure why.
Well, sure.
Choice.
Yeah.
Choice.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably, so it's almost like we had a write in your answer,
Well, I think one of the things we can learn from this is we need more time to really do it thoroughly. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
an introduction.
Well,
And thank you
with
for
that
being
note,
patient with us.
yeah, and on that note, if you want to put anything in the chat room about how they can reach you, any information, if you have a PDF of this PowerPoint, you can put it in there. I'll put my contact information again, and you can send it to you can ask me for it. And I am going to need to close the session because lunch is upon
we
us.
understand.
Yeah, and I thank you so much. This has been so fun. I love the interactivity and the participatory nature you made in this. It was really lively and exciting.